Now, shortly before Christmas, former Prime Minister Tony Abbott released his one-volume history of Australia. It's a beautiful book. I was given a copy of the book as a Christmas gift, and I have just finished it, already finished it. This is by way of being a book review, but also an encouragement for you to seek out your own copy. The book is called Australia, A History, and the first thing I have to tell you, it is a great read. Years ago, it would have been called a ripping yarn. It's a story told grippingly, swiftly, extremely well. Tony doesn't perhaps want me to put it quite like this because he was doing a very carefully researched, seriously written book about Australian history. But Australia's history is a wonderful story, and that story is told so well by Tony Abbott, it's an enthralling read. Now, I confess I'm a fan of the book. As a language person, I can tell you Tony Abbott uses language very well, and he writes clearly and in such a way the story flows. The book is a rapid as well as a rewarding read. Now, to make the vast landscape of Australian history fit into a compact one-volume book, there needs to be a main theme. In Tony Abbott's book, that theme is how Australia is governed and has been governed. Starting with Arthur Phillip and coming up to the present age, he writes about how the decisions were made that shaped Australia. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that he ignores the rest of the story. The narrative remains anchored in the events of our nation's story. We see it like a passing parade, the cultural, sporting, human events that are part of our nation. But the linking theme that holds it all together is what our governments have been getting up to while our lives of Australians have been running on, which is what I guess you'd expect from a former Prime Minister. Tony Abbott sees Australian government as having been formed primarily on the classical notions of a liberal society. Even Arthur Phillip, all those years ago, 1788, was determined not to let the early New South Wales colony be merely an open-air prison. His focus on the rehabilitation of convicts and forming good relationships with local Indigenous Australians was shaped by his view of classical liberalism. And that theme of a liberal society, Abbott sees as continuing throughout our history. But if there's a qualification that he makes, it's because of the nature of this place, the sometimes hostile landscape and climate, the very sparseness of the population spread over such a wide area. And he makes the point that because of that, government has always been expected to take a large share of the burden when it came to caring for, providing for the people. He implies that the sort of liberalism that will triumph in Australia will not be the sort of non-interventionist small government liberalism beloved by the libertarians on the right, but rather a genuinely liberal government that still sees the need for a government that steers the ship and works in the engine room. But whether or not I have read him correctly, you'll have to decide for yourself. And the way to do that is read the book. It's a first-class, possibly the very best, one-volume history of Australia, and we all need to know where we've come from and what produced the Australia we live in today. Australia, A History by Tony Abbott does that. I recommend it. And let me quickly remind you that the two-part documentary based on the book is still available to stream from Sky News.